Hi friends, I'm Chelsea Grayson coming to you once again from the Office of the CEO. This is my show where I can help you be more successful in your current career, and I can also help you successfully transition to a new career. Today's episode is a continuing part of my multi-part series on developing and polishing transferable skills. And during today's episode, I wanted to focus on the so-called soft skills. Right, so this isn't necessarily stuff that you're going to be asked to develop a specific expertise in. It's not necessarily something that you would think to go take a training or continuing education or development course in, and it might not be even something that your current organization thinks about developing your skills in, but this is certainly something that I look for at a very base level in terms of the folks that work for me or they're going to be successful under my tutelage. And it's something that I can spot right away. These soft factors are things that I can spot right away. If you've got them, you've got them. If you don't, honestly, I really don't want to take the time to train you in these things. You need to come prepared with these skills. So I really suggest all of you guys develop and polish these so-called soft skills. So the first thing, and this is going to seem very obvious, and you've probably heard this a million times, but I just can't tell you how on point this is. You've got to develop great business writing skills. And this concept of great business writing skills has actually developed over the course of time, and it's certainly different from industry to industry. I mean, in the legal industry, for example, where I started my career, this is the concept of briefs or, deal documents or memos to the file or to a partner. Right? In a business, in a very specific business setting, it might be about business writing in a PowerPoint or in a report that you'll have to file. So that's industry to industry. And then over the course of time, things have developed. So now it's not necessarily just the formal setting of a memo or a report or a brief, for example, but now you also need to be excellent at writing emails and knowing when it's time to write an email versus a more formal document like a memo, or when it's time to write part of what you wanted to say in an email and then attach a more formal and robust memo to the email. But either way, right, we're talking about in the actual document that you're writing, knowing that it's incredibly important to put an executive summary. I don't care how informal you think the setting is. I don't care how well informed you think the audience is, whoever it is you're giving this business writing to. You don't know who this is going to be forwarded to ultimately. You really don't know how closely the person who's reading it or the people who are reading it are paying attention. You don't know what is going on in their lives at the moment that they're popping your document open, whether, again, it's a report, a memo, an email. You just don't know what sorts of distractions are happening around them. So learning how to write a succinct and content-filled executive summary that pretty much summarizes exactly what it is you're about to tell them in fuller detail in the body of the email or in the document that you're attaching. I can't tell you how incredibly important that is. And for sure in the executive summary, which should absolutely be no longer than 4 or 5 sentences, if there are any glaring issues that need to be called out, if there are any exceptions to a particular rule that you're setting forth in your executive summary that exist, if there's anything that's going to be a gotcha, you absolutely always want to put that in your executive summary. You don't want to bury the lead and just include that in the document itself or in the body of your discussion, assuming that people are going to go on and read the fuller discussion. So you want to put all of the most important points in the executive summary in really succinct language, but including exceptions to what you're saying, including any gotchas, including any red flags, including something this person absolutely should not overlook. Should always assume that people are never going to go on to read the fuller description, or that they might forward your email along and it won't include the attachment. People do that all the time, right? So you want to make sure you get the absolute most important points into the executive summary. And by the way, this is a real art. Right? It's very easy, for example, to write and put all of your thoughts and have very flowy language. It's extremely difficult to put the most important points into 4 or 5 sentences so that anybody walking away really gets the gist of it. So this is absolutely going to take practice. Now, when we're moving on to the fuller discussion of whatever it is that you're talking about in this piece of business writing, no matter what, learn the art of signposting. Signposting, in my mind, is this idea of putting extremely obvious titles to different sections of your business writing. I don't care if this is a 3-paragraph, a 2-paragraph piece of writing. You want to say exactly what this next paragraph is going to be about. It's almost like the title of a chapter, or you're moving on to a new section of your report, right? And if you are talking about a report, you're most certainly going to be signposting, right? But make it extremely obvious exactly what this section is going to be about. Bold it, underline it, put a Roman numeral next to it. I don't care what, but this is, again, assuming that your reader is just glancing very quickly through this document. They did make it past the executive summary, yay, but they're not necessarily going to read the full paragraphs in each section unless the section heading is something that truly is something they need to know about and it really catches their eye. Right? So you want them to also be able to sort of pick up the gist of what this document is about just by taking a look at the signposts. And you want to use the signposts as a way to say, oh, come here and read this section. This is the thing that you absolutely need to read, right? Now, I'm not really a big fan of a conclusion. I think the executive summary right at the top sort of says it all. So I'm actually kind of okay with sort of doing the, just exiting out of the document the minute you finish your discussion. If you need to put a conclusion, go ahead. If you feel like it looks sort of naked without it, I feel like the conclusion is sort of redundant, and if you've done it right, then you will have accomplished everything you need to in the executive summary. That'll talk about exactly very quickly what your analysis was, what your position is, and what people need to look out for if they're going to apply your position. So now, you're not necessarily going to learn this on the job. You may not have learned it when you were coming up with your, through your education journeys, right? I mean, this is, if you were a STEAM major, for example, you may never have taken any sort of business writing course or any kind of a course, creative writing, other English literature courses that really focused on improving your writing skills. I know a whole bunch of people that have gotten very far and they really haven't the foggiest clue even about the most basic things. Like, you should go over every piece of writing that you've ever done before you hand it out to whoever it is you're going to hand it over to, with a fine-tooth comb, both for grammatical, punctuation, spelling errors, but also just reread it, read it over again. I usually edit things at least 3 times over. You can always find something to improve. You can always find words to take out. You'll always find mistakes. Go through and self-edit. You're not going to learn a lot of those tools, if depending on what your major was when you were coming up in your education, and you won't necessarily learn it on the job either. Again, your employer probably really expects that you're coming to the job well equipped with these tools already, right? So this is another thing, almost like we talked about accounting and understanding financial statements in the previous episode, where you really ought to look for a course. There's a ton of them online, and I can point you to them if you want to DM me on the side, that just gives you basic business writing skills. Again, it's not even just about the substance, right, or how you're wording things. It's about understanding what sort of a document is appropriate for what context, right? When is texting appropriate? When is an email appropriate? When should you actually have a formal document? Where should those formal documents ultimately reside? Is it a memo that goes to the file so it lives there permanently? Should it not go to the file? Should you be copying company counsel? These are all sorts of things that you're going to learn in the business writing context. And so I really suggest that you take a look at we can all improve in our writing skills, all of us, so really take a look at those and invest in one of these courses, because this is something that if you come and work for somebody like me or a number of my colleagues, I'm going to see your first piece of writing right out the box, and I'm right away going to make a judgment. This person is somebody that I can work with productively because they're going to get me exactly what I need in the format I need it in, and they're going to get it to me in a really succinct way. Or this is a person who's going to give me 15 pages every single time of ramblings, and I'm not going to understand the point of it until I get to the end. That's not going to be useful for me at my level. So I really suggest you invest in this course, because in all likelihood, nobody else is looking out for you on this one because they assume that you've got this skill. So number 2, issue spotting, otherwise known as critical thinking. This is a soft skill that I cannot enforce to you enough in terms of how important it is, right? So this idea of being able to look at a particular fact pattern, or being able to look at a particular initiative that's being proposed, a strategy that's being proposed, looking at a problem that is presenting itself to you at work, whether it's a big catastrophe or just sort of a little ongoing problem, and being able to take a look at that scenario and pick all the different issues that have presented themselves in that scenario. By the way, not just the ones that are being told to you that you need to deal with, right? And sometimes this comes in the form of there's an issue and a group of folks have come up with a particular solution, and you're looking at the solution and you need to be able to spot any issues in that solution. So they've all been involved in groupthink and coming up with the solution of this particular issue, and you need to be a one to be a critical thinker and say, this probably will work, but I just wanted to point out to you that if this, then that, and here's an issue there, and have you considered how this group is going to be impacted, or this other business division is going to be impacted by this solution? Don't take anything for granted. Don't assume that anything is perfect when you look at it or when the situation presents itself to you. Always force yourself to spot at least 5 different issues that are wrong, or at least are something that people should drill down on, or at least have some sort of consequence in every situation that is presented to you. Be a critical thinker. And there's really no way to hone this skill other than just to do it on a regular basis. I can't really think of a class that you'd go take that would really be successful for you unless you're going to go through law school, which of course all of law school is one big 3-year exercise in terms of developing critical thinking skills, but you're going to know when you've got this as an organic way of looking at things. You'll just feel it click in your brain, because every scenario you look at, every room you walk into, every conversation you have with anyone, you're going to be able to see things from 5 different sides automatically. So you just need to develop your brain skills in order to be a critical thinker. And just think about looking at everything like a bowling lane, right? Just, there's a million different bowling pins at the end of that lane, and you just need to start knocking them all down, right? Because it's not enough just to spot the issues. It's also about, can you come up with a potential response for that issue that you've just spotted? So third soft skill that I really suggest everyone develop, and that's consensus building, otherwise known as how to win friends and influence people. I'm making a joke, a reference to a book that was written a long time ago that a lot of people found helpful in this area. This is even more critical as you move up the food chain at your organization, or as you start your own company and start to run a team of your own. Right? So it's not enough that you obviously have the best idea or you've got the best proposal. It's not enough that, all the data is pointing to the idea that this is going to be the most successful way to go. You have to build consensus among the folks that it's going to take to implement this particular initiative or strategy. You can't lead people, you can't force people to drink water, right? You can't force them to come to the water that you want them to drink. They have to come there on their own. They have to understand the value in that water. They have to understand why it's crucial to their existence that they drink this water. But if you just shove their face in the water, they're just going to drown, right? And then that's not going to help anybody. So you need to understand how to back channel before meetings. You need to understand how to go to people before you make a decision and ask what their opinions are, and try to incorporate at least 1 or 2 things that they've said into the ultimate solution that you've crafted, right? So they all feel like they were a part of a team that came up with this particular answer to the question. They all have some sort of buy-in and personal responsibility in seeing it succeed, and then you're really going to get everyone online. Consensus building. It's better than just jamming things down people's throats. And that's not to say that you need to be indecisive or always kowtow to a group, right? I mean, at some point as a leader in particular, you are going to have to say, listen, I've heard what everyone has to say, and this is the way I've decided to go. But there's a way of leading people through that progression, having meetings and pre-meetings and side conversations and making them know that their position was heard, and then finally making your decision and everyone feeling confident that you've had enough conversations, you've gathered all the points of view, everyone's been heard, and this is the right way to go for the group. So consensus building. And finally, the last soft issue I wanted to touch on today is just this idea of leadership, right? And I know it sounds crazy to talk about that because most of the show is just based on this idea of, what does it take to be a good leader? But just think about leadership as a soft factor, and think about it particularly from the audience that you've got, right? Assuming that you're working at an organization right now, or assuming even that you're trying to start a company and you've got investors or lenders watching you as you start this company up. They're all looking to see what your leadership skills are like. What is your management skill? What are your management skills? Do you look like somebody who could take over? Do you look like someone who fits into their succession plan? Do you look like somebody who could be a plan B to the extent something happens to the actual leader of the company? Are you someone that could stand in? They're going to be wondering, are the people who work for you, are your subordinates, do they follow you willingly, or do they look like they're just scared of you? Are they intimidated, or are they inspired by you? Do they think they're just your friends, or do they understand that you are their leader? And even though it's a friendly dynamic, there is a hierarchy here. Are you productive, or do you let your folks sort of languish and you don't hold them accountable for their various KPIs and for the various milestones that you need them to hit on the timeline that you have set out? There is always at least one, probably multiple sets of eyes that are watching you as you lead and as you develop your management skills. And you need to know that, because you can get stopped very quickly at a particular level in your career if you're known to be a producer, if you're known to generate a lot of revenue, right? You're known to be a great cog in the wheel or a worker, but people aren't seeing you're developing leadership skills. So be very open and outward about how you're managing people. Talk to all sorts of folks up the chain of command about how you're doing that, even get their advice, and make sure everyone sees that you, even at the smallest of levels, that you are stepping up as a leader, even if it's only of one person. Because folks are looking at you and they want to see, can you graduate to the next level from, again, just employee up to leader or in upper management. So anyways, I'd love for you guys to drop me a comment if you want and let me know if there are any soft skills that you think I left out. And make sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss the next episode, And I will see you next time from the Office of the CEO.